Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Reaction Time podcast. We're back. We're back again. Every 2 weeks is becoming our routine because we all have lives and can't watch all of the League of Legends. So coming up with talking points for just 1 week of games that we've only seen part of some of is difficult, it turns out. But, details. Anyway, Steven and Eric are here. Hello, boys.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's
Going
going.
pretty good.
Are you guys enjoying the frosty weather in the middle of the United States we've been having the last couple of days?
Now that it shot back up to like 22 from 0, I'm a
Sweltering.
lot better with it. Yeah, I wore my layers going outside today, and it almost felt like it was too much. And that's where I'd like it to be. Is where I feel like I'm over bundling as opposed to that I'm dying outside.
I checked on a temperature map, I think on Monday, and literally the coldest mark in the lower 48 states of temperature was in Des Moines, Iowa on Monday. It was on Tuesday morning when I went to work, it was actually 20 below zero.
Oof.
It was a good time. I really enjoyed it. I too dressed in layers because it turns out it's important for not dying in those times.
Yeah, I had a car battery that froze solid, like the liquid inside of the battery froze and completely bricked it. I was like,
Yep.
I didn't even know that could happen. That's some witchcraft.
But spring is on the way. I have looked at my forecast. It's supposed to be back above freezing next week, and I'm deeply looking forward to that. But anyway, you're not here for the weather off the rift. You're here for the weather on the rift. So let's make it rain. We are going to begin in Europe this week. We decided to pick 3 teams or events to talk about in each of Europe and North America. We're going to skip on a little bit of LPL and LCK this week because I'm not sure the LPL has picked back up from Lunar New Year celebrations yet, and the LCK just picked up, I believe, like early this morning in North American time with a couple of games. So there's just not a lot there, and not many of the games we got to watch. So we're going to stick to NA and EU this week. We're starting with Europe, and what better place to start than the clash of the split thus far, the game between the top 2 teams in Europe, G2 and Rogue. We hinted at it on this podcast, looking at how those teams have started the season, and it happened, and it was a banger of a game, 50 minutes long, G2 coming out with the win at the end of the game. Eric, I'm going to start with you since I know you just watched the highlights of this game. What stuck out to you as takeaways for either G2 or Rogue from this game moving forward?
To me, it struck me a lot as G2 winning off of their macro game expertise that they've always had, where when it comes down to slugfests late in the game and macro decisions, they are the better team. There was everything you want to for that series when you think about game macro, as far as trading Mountain Dragon Soul for Baron buff, winning the game off of Elder Dragon as opposed to the Baron, crazy things with turret dives, traded objectives left and right, as opposed to just straight up advantages. It was very quality in that regard. So G2 winning off of that same macro experience even without perks is really what struck me the most, is how I'm expecting them to continue to outshine these other teams.
We saw Steven go.
I actually have a question. So what I've noticed, and it'll slightly relate it to North America, but has G2 become less of a clown fest without perks?
No.
Okay.
Caps is very clown fest. If anything, it's they now have Reckless, who's a rock, who's used to playing with people who hard hand. And so they have if anything, it's made them it's enabled them more. And when we talk about Fnatic later, it's a similar kind of story where it's these teams look empowered to be even more outrageously aggressive in some ways. Caps was hard diving between turrets on Echo in order to make it work this game. As long as he gets to play champions that give him this sheer outplay carry potential and dive multiple turrets to get gold leads, G2 will be a Clown Fiesta team,
Well,
and I don't think they're
and
going to
that's
get super punished for it until they hit Worlds again.
the pick ban set up for that really nicely. You look at the top side of this map for G2, Quinn, Nidalee, Echo. Those champions like to go in and murder people. That's what they do. There's no like disengage here. You got Gragas support for some disengage on Rogue side. G2 is going in. It's going in and then letting Jhin kill things after you all go in.
And like the Echo pick especially is like a traditional LPL counter pick to Azir in lane. Like people love taking Echo against Azir or Syndra in these matchups just for like the fact that it lets you have solo kill threat and still farm okay. Like and Cap showed why it still is a strong pick, and so other regions should consider picking up Echo as an answer to this like Azir Corki meta rather than like opting into the Syndra or Orianna or the head-to-head and creating some really boring League of Legends.
Much less the
experiences.
Corki.
Yes.
Wait, you're not excited for Azir Corki all day?
No. I'm so pissed that actually came back at least once this weekend.
Yeah.
I like the Trist pick being what people are leaning towards, though.
Eric, tell us about mid Trist. I don't care that doesn't relate to this game. Talk about mid Trist.
Mid Trist is kind of like mid Lucian in the fact that you're an ADC in mid lane, so you can bully the shit out of most of these mages, and then also you have range advantage, so you can be really obnoxious. The other big thing with mid Trist is that you take turrets really fast, or at least turret plates. Being able to take turret plates and punish recall timings, so then you can take mid lane turret with the Rift Herald, especially in like, I'm kind of surprised it hasn't been as big in like LPL, because like that to me strikes the LPL playstyle very well, where it's like you take your first 2 plates in mid lane, you take Rift Herald, no matter what, you drop Rift Herald mid lane and you take that turret, and like and you just like hard force the middle of the map open, even if you have like 5v5s to make sure that Herald charge goes off. And it's
Trist,
like that's
for the record, has
perfect.
only actually gotten through in 3 games, is 2-1 thus far, but has already drawn 21 bans. So it's a known thing that is happening.
Yeah, and like I said, it's like the Lucian as in regards to like it's this mid lane AD carry. Now, the other big thing, right, is AD solo laners are really good when people want to pick Talia or Lilia in the jungle. That's like, or Nidalee. But like, you know, an AP jungler, you want to have AD solo lanes, and Tristan is a way to bring AD from mid. And like, I don't think Trist will, like, I think Lucian is like a lot stronger for like map presence in a lot of ways, but like Tristana accelerates the game more in like pro level. In solo queue, you should probably just be playing mid Lucian because that's really toxic. But like Tristana is really good for like a pro level where laners actually know what they're doing in these matchups.
Well,
And
what's interesting about both of them is for the first time in a couple of years, we've actually started to see Lucian back in the bot lane a little bit. And Trist is also being used as a flex pick. So it's another advantage that you can do with both of these picks currently is we haven't had as much of Flex Fiesta compared to Season 10 other than Pantheon this season. Like there's a Kaisa, you know where it's going. There's a Renekton, it's almost always going top. There's like Seraphine is a notable exception to this because you can see her played in 3 roles. But like beyond that, having something that actually can flex like a Lucian, like a Trist, that can do fine in bot lane or be played mid lane and have advantageous matchups, I think is a pick ban niche to find for both of those champions now compared to like Trist. I don't think has ever been in that spot in pro play before, or at least not for a very long time.
There's been like a lot of roll handshakes so far this season because people have still been figuring it out, and until like the roll handshakes stop in like top lane especially, then some of the power of this flex is diminished because it's so much more is about like what's your comp's objective and what are you trying to do on the map. But now that we're starting to realize what's OP and what's not, and we've seen like some more power picks enter the picture, I'd be expecting flex picks to grow in power as we go on. One of the examples I have of this is like we talked in this cast about top lane Volibear dropping off the map partially because of like the Gore Drinker meta, where you wanted to pick a Gore Drinker top laner, and then Volibear wasn't as good with Gore Drinker as Aatrox or Renekton. And so far, though, now we've seen Whippo play Volibear 3 times, and he has like a 2 out of 3 win rate, and he won lane every time. If you take out like super like top camp into Renekton usually, or like other like of these carry picks that are short range. So it's like there are ways you can punish lane matchups that just haven't been being exploited yet. And as teams like start seeing, hey, I really don't want to play into that, or or like the infamous like Bjergsen taking mid Urgot from Keen nonsense. Like as soon as teams start really like thirsting on these power picks, we'll see some more like flexes grow in power because you don't want to get caught out.
The last point I want to hit from G2 Rogue before we move on is a point from the pick and ban stats, which I'm going to give myself a pat on the back, and we should also do this. I believe we said 2 weeks ago on this podcast that Rell might be pretty good, and people are just figuring out how to play her. If we look at large sample size things, so anything over, say, 10 picks total in professional play since the start of the split in the 4 major regions, we still have Talia up there with a 70% win rate, which is absurd. We got Rise, 70% over 23 picks, which is pretty good. And then, oh look, here's Rell, 105 picks, 62% win rate, third of large sample size champions, and Mickey's Rell was part of G2 getting the win in this game.
And I think we also called out the Rise pick coming up too, as Twisted Fate would drop off, because he is I don't want to say better answer, but just a higher scaling answer than Twisted Fate, and I would say more rewarding when you pull it off, because I think with Twisted Fate you're still always just going to like put yourself in an inting position to global ult, throw a stun card, Zonias, and hope your team can follow up, where Rise has a little more tools to utilize his roam.
Yeah, as I look at the win rates for the Rise, I see the top 2 Rise players I've seen. Jizuke, known Rise player, 3-1 on the champion. Doinby, world's most famous Rise player, 2-0 on the champion, 6 KDA. Rise players know how to play Rise, and if Rise meta happens, it's a problem if you play against a team like an FPX or an EG if Jizuke's having a good day.
That's my delusion of like the 10-man roster. It's like, where's our Rise? Like, he's good, we're gonna field him, and like the start of that is coming when there's like niche answers to things, or something that's like slightly stronger if you know how to play it. Like we're seeing that with Echo. Like Echo can be very strong if you know how to just completely run yourself down and get the kills and not die, but you have to play super aggro, and knowing that nuance play style is very rewarding if you know how to do it.
We weren't going to talk about Jizuke, but we keep talking about Jizuke. Echo, you're describing the reasons why Jizuke can look really good and really bad at the same time. Anyway, we're talking about current EU players, not former EU players. So when we were brainstorming for this, we had the idea to do 3 teams from each region, and Eric most fervently wanted to talk about Fnatic, who, after somewhat of a questionable start to the split in playstyle and results, have stabilized themselves into 3rd place in the LEC at 6-3. And I noticed when I was looking at the LEC summary and games of Legends that G2, Rogue, and Fnatic are the only 3 teams with positive gold difference, I believe it is, in the entire league, which is probably a sign that Fnatic is getting more comfortable where they are as an upper echelon team. So, Eric, what struck you about Fnatic's performance the last couple of weeks and how they've gotten back up to winning ways?
The big thing to me is how good Whippo and Hilly have looked on this iteration of the roster, working with Niski and Upset, where Whippo's Riven game especially was like a clinic in how to abuse a winning lane matchup and then snowball out of control and even show up in team fights, which is something that, I've only really seen from like the Riven 1 tricks historically, like Viper or Forbidden, right? And so seeing Blippo like pull out this pick and then hard dumpster a game was like pretty incredible. And then he's done the exact same kind of gameplay style uh on the Renekton, on the Volibear, on the Gragas, and looked good. And Blippo looked really bad last year on Fnatic when working with Nemesis and Reckless. So something's definitely changed that's let him that's like enabled his propensity to like for how he approaches team fights especially, and like what they do on the map. He's still like, he and Hilly are clearly still the same players. You can see them being aggressively far forward, going for vision or going for flanks, and then potentially getting caught out and dying. Like Blippo's Pantheon game was not as satisfying to watch, but it's like very clear that with this new cast, they have a much more like they're either the way their shot calling has worked has much more like enabled this team to just take in its role as the aggressor in most situations, and that's really let them shine, or Yamato Cannon also behind the scenes has been like letting them focus on more of his action versus control paradigm or whatever it was for how to approach the game.
I'd also like to note that it was widely noted that Fnatic had a big downgrade this season because they lost Reckless. However, Upset's really freaking good, and we've known this for a while. So seeing him somewhat unleashed on this skilled of a team is exciting to see.
This is the best like shot calling team that Upset's been a part of. Like most of his career, he's been stuck with Nuke Duck, and like the problem that we've traditionally had with Nuke Duck teams is that they start losing vision for how to play the game in mid and late. Where Nuke Duck is playing LeBlanc and is going for these picks, and if he doesn't get the pick, then your team does nothing, and then you like bleed out and lose, even if you had a good gold advantage. And so like this is the best like game plan team he's got to work with. And also because Hilly and Whippo are so aggressive, like he has to go in. You can't like there are no excuses in this. There's no like, I should back out now because we can win later, as opposed to, like taking this fight. It's you go in for this fight or you're a coward and you get labeled as such, and then like, it's actually better for the KDA player on Fnatic to aggress, because if you back out, like you're gonna look even worse than you would in any other circumstance.
A thing that I noticed looking at Fnatic's stats here is that we talk about going in and aggression, and oh look, Thresh has been banned against Fnatic in 5 of their 9 games. I wonder why.
Pretty strong. People are just have to start banning Rell against Hilly though, because he looks sick on that champion. His Leona is very questionable. So like, if I were a team playing against Fnatic, I would try and put Hylissang on Leona, where he continues to int, and then just like try and like funnel him and Blippo onto their like into their mental picks where they like beat themselves. That's how you take out this team. Niski's also impressed me now that he's gelled more with this roster, as far as like playing whatever role is needed for them to win games, which so far has like actually shifted him towards more meta mages, but he's also played a lot of mid Seraphine, which really helps when you have, these like inters on your roster. So like when Blippo and Hilly like hard engage 2v5, you throw the Seraphine ult over it, and then it turns out that they live, and that's backbreaking. If you can't kill Hilly or Blippo before Self-Made and Upset show up to actually deal damage. So like, I don't know, I think this roster is fantastic, and it's really been shining.
An Upset stat for you while I'm talking about Upset. Samira win rate over the top 4 regions over the entire patch so far, 96 picks, 48% win rate. Upset on Samira, 3 games on the champion, 3 wins, 15.7 KDA on the champion.
They go in.
Samira's good for going in.
Yeah.
Like he's played Kaisa and Aphelios, both 50% win rate, but the Samira hadn't missed yet for him, where it has been inconsistent for a lot of other players. So I think that's interesting to note. Steven, you have any Fnatic thoughts for us before we move on?
I think just maybe the reason Samira is working out so well is that he is playing that champion with a support that wants to be up in them guts. And so that's where Samira shines, is when she doesn't have to play like a coward in the lane phase and get out of there and start getting all of the alphabet points to start spinning. And so I think that's another thing that's enabling Hilly to like play something like Rell, where like Rell's only option is to go in and fight, and if you're not fighting, like we both die. And playing Samira's like, okay, like we're going in, let's do it, fam.
Last team we're going to talk about in Europe, we were talking through our prep before we started, and Eric had the most delightful analogy I've heard for anything in a while when talking about Excel Esports, who find themselves 5-4 in the LEC, which is respectable and good for right in that mix for fourth place, right below Fnatic in the top three. So not anything too bad. But Eric, what do you think about Excel?
Well, they're the most win late team possible, and it's absolutely disgusting. Like watching Excel games is like watching an episode of Jersey Shore, where it's a complete train wreck, but you can't look away because you know what's going to happen. In their game against Misfits last week, Misfits was up like a couple thousand gold at 15 minutes. They were up towers, but they hadn't won anything yet. And it's like, all right, well, we're approaching the 20-minute mark and you haven't closed this out. I have a bad feeling about this. And then, lo and behold, Excel win from behind again. I think that like with this time with Cries on Cho'Gath top as opposed to him playing the Lulu or the Ivern, which they were doing earlier on. And it's just absolutely disgusting how much they concede in the early game and then just manage to, like, you know, have solid gameplay and macro and wave management, and then you know, beat you at a team fight around Elder Drake and then take the game. And it's absolutely disgusting. Their gold differential at 15 minutes is like minus 2,000 gold, and they have a winning record. What is that? How do you have that shit of a lane phase and then win games in like this like mythic item world?
It's
Like,
like the reverse of what Skara called like dissing toss. It's like up until they've won, they're losing.
Well, it's like up until they've lost, like they're probably going to win, and you need to find a way to answer that.
yeah, the stats here are hilarious. Eric mentioned the gold differential at 15, down 1,800 gold. They're typically down about 10 CS across the board at 15 minutes. They're down about a tower at 15 minutes. The average tower difference, they're down about a tower at 15 minutes. They haven't gotten a first tower in 9 games, if I'm reading this correctly.
They have not.
One.
No.
They've gotten first blood twice in 9 games, and they're 5-4.
They're the ultimate gatekeepers of like your macro ability. Like if you can close out a game and you can play aggressive, you will win. If you are not good at like finding the rhythm within the singular game and closing it out, you will lose. And they have perfectly split all of the teams like right down the middle.
If you end up in Nayram world against them, that's a losing prop. If you end up needing to 50-50 a Baron for whatever reason, why are you doing that? And that's what they punish, like, consistently. I just have to give mad props to Youngbuck, who I think is criminally, like, undervalued. I think he was given like one of the weakest overall rosters to work with as far as like some of these players, and then he came up with this winning strategy for them, and like when because Dan's been struggling, but he's starting to get into his groove now, and just watching this team win these games is like I said, it's a train wreck. It's just so satisfying seeing these teams not see it coming, and then not pressure enough to really drive home an advantage, and then get terribly punished.
And it has to be
I
intentional.
haven't looked at enough of the kill heat maps for other teams to know how typical or atypical this is, but their kills are, just eyeballing here, at least half just in the river. That objective control seems to be a thing that they do. Huh. Oh, look, and there's the next highest cluster spot is in bot lane, which is often related to objective control, which is usually good for a team that wants to win lates. It seems coordinated, even as questionable as some of the numbers look.
Now that I'm kind of thinking about this, is the current standings the pretty much where everybody ended last season? I think it's
not
close.
quite.
I think Mad Lions is a little lower.
We need a
SK
couple more weeks
lower.
for it to really develop.
Yeah.
SK's lower. Mad Lions is kind of close. Fnatic's a tad higher. Remember, Fnatic and G2 barely got into playoffs.
Right.
And so it was it was even in LEC so long for last split. That's I think the biggest difference is that there is more gap between teams than there was last split. Although that could be exacerbated by the fact that Vitality, who's 1-7, is not expected to make a Schalke miracle run even with Crown Shot.
And nor is Astralis, who have now, I believe, benched the Duck, or the Duck choose to step down.
The Duck is dealing with some kind of family stuff, and so is stepped down. Magic Felix looks great, and I like this roster a lot better with him in it. Magic Felix is another one of these players who's been in the pro scene for ages and has needed a chance, and so I have a higher degree of confidence in this roster, even though I still think they have some serious problems. But so seeing them win a game was really cool.
Yeah, they've got this. Astralis getting to 2 wins is, I think, notable for them staying even at all relevant to this moving into the second half of the split, because obviously, should be a full round robin done now for EU.
Yeah.
And we're gonna see more as this develops, but wouldn't shock me if the top 6 right now are the 6 playoff teams, Rogue, G2 at the top, then Fnatic, Excel, Mad Lions, and Schalke. Those are the 6 teams with positive records at this point. And if that's the 6, then okay, that wouldn't shock me at all. So with that said, we're gonna hop on over the Atlantic to our home and native NA here to talk about how it's going. We also picked 3 teams in North America, and we mostly hit teams not necessarily in the top of the standings, although we are going to talk about 100 Thieves, but we've talked a lot about some of the top teams, and this week was, I think, a little more interesting for some teams further down the table. And related, we're going to start with TSM, who we have questioned heavily on this podcast in terms of their roster construction and their play to start the season. They've been even in the wins that they've had, they kind of looked like garbage. The TSM CLG game was just a train wreck the entire way through. The less spoken of that game, the better. But they come out of this weekend, I believe they won all 3 games this weekend, or went 2-1. Power of Evil wins Player of the Week from LOL Esports, and was well deserved. Steven, I want to start with you on this one. What have TSM figured this out? Actually,
it's hard to say, because you look at Huni and you look at Sword Art, and Huni is going to be coin flip. I don't think Huni has ever figured out. When he figures it out himself, he'll start trolling himself and throwing games away. And I don't know if Sword Art is getting to do exactly what he thought he would get to do. He looks not up to what we know he can do, even in the games that they're winning, because they're not really winning these like by a large margin, except for the Team Liquid game, which I didn't feel good watching that one. But I think they got established with, because they didn't really change up what they were doing. That's my big question mark. Is like they just kind of got better at doing it. So there's improvement, and that might be considered figuring it out. But are they going to adapt to any meta shifts? I don't think so.
The only thing that I've seen that they've changed up is Sword Art's been playing support Pantheon, and like one of the big ways that I've seen veteran supports punished leagues is picking supports with globals to punish weaker teams on map play and map rotation. So like with Pantheon or with Tom Kench is like the other big support global example, you can like just punish people who like push for greeting on waves, or like rookie talent or teams that just aren't as up to snuff quite yet, and then like really drive home a victory, or use it to like make comebacks or like undo like losses in lane phase. And so sure enough, like their win against Immortals was them punishing Revenge's positioning a non-zero amount, and the same thing with Golden Guardians. And so like them picking globals is like a band-aid for like their clear like coordination issues, to make it so that like they can gel with Huni and Sword Art specifically.
And Sword Art played Bard in the Golden Guardians game, right? Which is like another band-aid solution, in my opinion, because Bard is quite punishable, but is very abrasive when you're talking about like, look, we're gonna make a play, here comes the Bard ult, and the whole team is coming over the wall, and it's gonna happen. So, are they gonna keep that pace, or are they gonna get found out that where if we just pressure bot lane and shut Sword Art down from doing anything and utilizing those globals, are they still as effective, and have they figured it out?
Well, I think that's a very dangerous mindset to go into, of like focusing or punishing bot lane, because one of the things with these like higher investment rosters, I would say, is that if you go against them with a known game plan, such as camp bot lane, they can just opt into that 3v3 or 4v4. And then you're like giving TSM an out to having to figure out how to coordinate as a team. You're like telling them, let's rumble bot lane, bring Huni. And then when you go into that 5v5, you're letting their like very gifted players have a chance to just like outskill you in micro, rather than having to understand how to actually approach the map. And like that's very dangerous against TSM. I wouldn't recommend that, actually. I would continue to just tilt Huni off the face of the earth personally. But yeah.
The other thing I feel like should be noted about TSM, we note that Power of Evil got Player of the Weekend, played a great Azir game, had some great moments. Now that the meta is shifting a little bit away from TF and just to control mages and stuff, there has never been a more PoE meta that ever PoE'd than right now. PoE's champions that he has picked thus far in the LCS are Syndra twice, Azir twice, Corki, and Victor. Power of Evil in his career in professional play, his second, third, and fourth most played champions ever are Syndra, Azir, and Victor. You know what number one is? Orianna, who's also smack dab in the middle of the meta. There has never been a meta that has fit him better than this.
And the only reason he's not playing.
7 times it's been Azir Corki.
Got to remember when PoE started out, when they wanted TF on their team on Unicorns of Love, they didn't put it mid lane. Kikis would play it from the jungle so that you didn't have to have PoE deal with that shit. So like this is much more in his comfort zone.
Yeah, like it's just this is just what he wants, is control mages all day, all the time, and it's what has worked for him. Also, just while I'm looking at PoE's career page here, I just note some of the KDAs on the small champions. 4 games of Ezreal, 50% win rate, but a 13 KDA. 2 games of Rumble with 2 wins and a 29 KDA. I love Power of Evil so much. He's one of my favorite players. I wish he didn't play for TSM.
Yeah, you're talking about his big champions, and I go back to the mid Smite days where he was playing mid Ezreal and like dumpstering EU, but then like Kale might have been a mistake, like a bridge too far, but like yeah, he played like the Ezreal and the Kog'Maw and like the Kale mid did that nonsense too, which are also to some extent control mages, just like a different type of control mage.
Corky's a control mage.
Yeah.
So that's the TSM story. They're in a really good place and kind of have started to look like they have figured some stuff out, which is interesting for the league. Joining them at 4-2, I think an even bigger surprise is Dignitas, who, Steven, I also want to start with you on this one because Dardoch, man,
He's
holy
finally,
cow.
finally.
I did not see this coming at all.
It's very strange because as like a self-imposed Dardoch like not hater, and I want him to find the niche and get that like overcoming story like tied up in a bow. It's just all of a sudden like he can play really really well, and he just cannot play really really well for extended periods of time. So I'm hoping this lasts for quite a bit longer. It is very beneficial for the way he plays. I think he's busted out Rek'Sai, which I'm happy to see came out, and I believe he got a win on that. And he's being able to do what he wants to do. Yeah, because it's like Nidalee, Rek'Sai, and Kindred.
Yeah, the Kane game.
Oh yeah, the Kane game. Yeah,
Yeah.
like he's being let run around and kill things, which is what Dardoch like. I remember it was like Dardoch and Acadian, and oh shoot, what's the other Soul Boy jungler? Dang it, whatever. When they were known when they came out of the gates as like rookies, they were just these hyper aggressive like kill the enemy team junglers that you played through, and they're getting to do that on Dignitas, which is wild.
My only like point of hesitation for this is that they have had like the lightest matchup so far of most of these like winning teams, where like their 2 losses are against TL and 100 Thieves, and I think that honestly their win against EG is like the only like super relevant team that they've beaten so far, and that win against EG I think is partially due to EG having an absolutely atrocious pick ban in that game. Which was very punished by the Senna Tom Kench bot lane nonsense. So that's my only point of hesitation with Dig is like when we see them play against TSM, because they haven't played TSM yet.
It's this weekend is Fly C9 TSM.
Yeah, and so like seeing how if they come out of this week with more than 1 win, that would be a very strong indicator that we underestimated this roster and what they're doing, with the Dardoch Afromu shot calling core, but working with Fake God and Soligos and like Neo too, who's really shown up so far.
It's and the stat you probably know by now if you've looked at Dardoch, he has played 10 games thus far between lock-in and the spring split. He has played 10 unique champions thus far. I don't know if he keeps that up another weekend because he's played all of the meta stuff and well beyond. He's got the Mundo game, the Kane game, the Rengar game. I don't know how much deeper this goes, but it's going to be interesting to see.
If he just keeps rotating it and keeping and that might be the play style that he uses, is being unpredictable but also not falling into any kind of patterns so he doesn't get in his own head. If that's what keeps him on the straight and narrow, exhaust that champion pool, man. Like it seems to be effective. But I do
and as I look at this, like he's not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that he's picked unique champions in all the game. Because Fake God, top lane, only champion he's picked twice is Gragas, 5 unique champions. Soligo in the mid lane, only champion he's picked twice is Orianna. Everything else he's played once. Neo in the bot lane, only champion he's played twice is Isa, of course. Everything else he's played once. Like, this whole team is showing that they've got lots of champions in the wheelhouse and therefore lots of different team compositions they can put together.
Who is their coach?
I should know that.
Yeah, we all should, but we don't, and it's okay. We're just gonna fact check it real quick, because that's a viable strategy. Like, just like be so unpredictable and so flexible with like either like unknown counters to the
did-
meta, or
Did they bring back ThinkCard, or is he gone?
if it's ThinkCard, that explains a lot, because this has some nice Echo Fox vibes, which makes me happy.
Oh, it's Mabry is like their strategic coach. Like, I don't know. What have you done?
Neo flying under
Oh,
the
he
radar.
was impactful. So it was the player. It was like impactful was like the ADC on their academy team who took over as a shot caller for a while, and so now he's acting as strategic coach for this roster. So yeah, because like impactful was like one of that like almost on a starting roster academy AD carry players. Like, was he on TL's academy roster for a while? I don't remember. Let me see. I don't see a head coach.
I wonder if they're just
assume-
letting the players kind of like group think their way through problem solving, which that might yield like, I'm just gonna pick this. It's
Well,
like, okay.
and the thing is, when you have somebody who's been around as long as Afro has, you'd suspect that he has a pretty decent voice in some of this as well.
Yeah, I think it was on one of the odd air broadcasts. It was brought up as like, Afromu's got to start showing up. Like, you're the veteran. Like, you're the one that this team is more or less built around. Like, start showing up. And I think he is. And looking at his like playmaking pool, it's Blitzcrank, Thresh, Alistar, and Tom Kent. Like, that's where you show up, or with those champions. So it's very strange. But I do kind of want to pivot a little bit. What's the win rate of the Deer champion? Jeez, that I hate
Lilia?
something. Yeah.
Lily is pretty low
Lila.
right now, I think, but I
Yeah,
could be
'cause
wrong.
she's
it's
garbage.
below 0, but I don't think it's that bad.
It's like,
Or not below 0, below 50%.
yeah, teams need to stop picking that champion, and I'm mostly mad at Team Liquid for picking it, because like it's not a good pick unless you have this very specific team comp, which we've talked about before. But it's like you have to have like absurd long range engage that you can follow up, and like you have to be able to fish for bowling balls and poke out, and it's just like Lilia is only good at that time. She is not something that you can just pick. It's like, she's meta. No, it's just like, stop. It's really bad. And has Dardoch played Lilia?
Yes, in lock-in.
Yeah.
And lost.
Believe so.
So like you called out a lot of the issues. Like one of the other ones is that or one of the things that I would say in Lilia's favor is that if teams start moving away from these like absurdly high burst damage comps into like slower paced team games with like Senna and moving into like a more like prolonged team fight style, Lilia might get a tad better because you have like engage options, and then you're not going to die as soon as you go in for your first Q. Because like that was a part of the problem with Lilia in this meta, is like if everyone's playing like Kaisa where they're jumping in and activating Gale Force immediately, and your like top laner is like Renekton, and you have like a control mage who just ults on top of Lilia, like you don't have enough of an HP pool to deal with that nonsense. And so just really easy to die fast. And so like if teams start picking slower comps, maybe there's a window for that where you can like you have an opportunity to go in and be really harassy engagey. I think Lilia would also work pretty well awkwardly with Seraphine or some kind of follow-up to keep you alive after you go in. But like it still is in this like it definitely does. It is a pick that requires more pick ban understanding in how you're drafting your team, and especially in NA we've seen some like really questionable like decision makings for how you assemble a team composition with a game plan that you could like position in these team fights around objectives.
And Lilia's win rate is bad at 43% across the top 4 regions. But it's better than Graves.
Graves is so bad. And it's more or less the same.
36%.
Jeez. I don't know why teams are like almost falling back on these. It's like, this is like this. I'm getting pushed down to this champion, but it's good. Or like, they're not picking compositions where it works well with. The games are ending too quickly for Graves and more or less Lilia.
Well, okay. I want to take a stab at this because I think I have at least somewhat of an idea. The main thing that is notable with the jungle pool right now is if we take out Pantheon because he's banned a lot, almost more than any other champion. The main junglers in the pool right now are Talia, AP, Nidalee, AP, Lilia, AP, and then Olaf, who just got nerfed, Udyr, whose win rate has been steadily dropping, and Graves. So it strikes me that teams need to figure out if you need a team where you need an AD source out of the jungle, you probably need to have a little Dardoch and find something other than Graves to be your AD source.
Kindred, Rek'Sai, awesome, like the Kane, like, and that maybe is why he's looking so good right now, is because you can pilot those champions and they're completely viable. Like Rek'Sai has great clear, great gank, works really well with utility mages as like the delivery system for whatever you want, and Kindred provides a lot of that wombo and like extending or like completely stopping a burst fight. Pick those champions. Do not pick Graves. Do not pick Lilia. Do not pass go. Like,
the other thing that I've seen that's like kind of concerning, and so I'm not sure if this is a positive sign, is like Rogue over in EU has been playing a number of Jarvan games, like, and that's like the biggest thing with these Jarvan games from Inspired to me is that it's opting into a slower wave clear champion. Like so much of the jungle meta in the past year has been like faster and faster clear speeds, going to Nidalee, going to Graves, going to Olaf, going to these champions who clear the jungle really fast, and so Rogue has kind of like avoided that in some of these games, deprioritizing jungle picks, like having him have a lower clear speed, but then like having great gank setup to actually get lanes ahead, and so it's like a return to like the kind of like Yanko style gameplay you'd want, seeing these champions. And so like it's really baffling to me that they've been making it work when it was so anathema for a very long stretch of last year, to try and opt into those matchups. So I wonder if teams also could look into that. Like, what if you go to the Jarvan or you go into the I had another one, like shit.
Kindred was a good example. It's been picked
Yeah.
15 times. Jarvan's been picked 9 times. Like, teams are starting to nibble around the edges of this.
oh, isn't the Rune King Edward
Diego.
Diego.
Yeah, he's being added this week. Yes.
I believe it should be the right time for him.
Yeah, and there's an AD option.
He might be delayed. AD, the AD option, yeah. He might be delayed. I don't know. He might suffer the same problems that like Ione is at the pro level, which is that like he's a solo queue champion. And so like it'll be interesting. It depends on how balanced the kit is, right? Because Ione's kit is still incredibly unbalanced as far as like the stat blocks, but like as Perks called out after getting destroyed because the enemy team had on-click CC, in like the lock-in losses, like you don't want to play a champion who dies because you get right clicked by Redectin or Twisted Fate or Udyr is like just like the big be all end all with some of these picks. And like Viego has like some tools that Yone doesn't for these situations, but it at the end of the day it still is like this melee AD character who only heals off of auto attacks or attack abilities.
Speaking of which, it's a good time to bring this up since you brought up on-click CC. This doesn't relate to the teams that we're talking about, but let's have the conversation from last weekend. Why would you pick Camille with no flash into Cloud9 3 games in a row? Let me just Udyr into this, kill you over and over and over and over and over again.
it's like one of these game theory things, and so like somebody watched too much of like somebody's stream or somebody's gameplay or mechanics where they were able to abuse cheater recalls with that summoner spell and then be able to build like an insurmountable advantage in their lane. So then the jungler won't show up because if it turns into a 2v2, you just lose. And so that's like what it's really about. It's about taking advantage of your extra combat summoner to like get a cheater recall, get an item advantage, and then be able to like take over the game. Now, like the other thing that's related to this is kind of like the Hex Flash Alistair bot lane stuff that was pretty big in the meta for a bit there with like Alistair or Set, right? Where it's like I use my flash because I have a backup, and then I can like blow one of your summoners. So then we can like force you to play more defensively so we can get an item advantage so we can take over the game. And it's like there's like two flaws with this. One flaw is that besides the Udyr run at you flaw, is that as soon as people know that this is happening, like if you hit tab on your keyboard and you see which summoners your lane opponent shows up with, you can play the game in such a way to not just get blown out by the fact that they have an ignite in your lane. It's like incredibly easy to deal with after you've like experienced it.
And part of the way you do that is to set up a tent in the top lane as the jungler, which C9 demonstrated the first time it was picked against them. Blabber camped the hell out of top lane and murdered a dude 5 times. And then it's the next team that locks in the same thing and is like, you really think the game plan's going to be different this time?
And Blabber was camping top lane even without them running.
Yeah, like Blabber, who won Player of the Week in week 1 of the LCS, mostly thanks to his opponent's top laners not taking flash into lane, I would say.
And positioning very aggressively. Like, you have to position with Camille without flash with an escape route. You have to have your escape plan ready to go. But they were like shoving to tower, aggressively grappling hooking, and then like Udyr would be like, "Hey, what's up?" And they're like, "Oh no, how could this have happened?"
There's an Udyr who can just walk up and slap me.
How did I end up behind there? Like I just don't know how I got
I guess
here.
I better go push it up again.
Again.
Can't happen the second time.
Yeah.
Oh wait, now I'm behind by 2 kills. Oh, they're gonna dive me now. Oh, I don't have any items. I'm dead again.
So it's kind of awkward because like the most familiar like thing I'm used to seeing that in is like the LPL, and it usually happens when you just have a massive amount of disrespect for your lane opponent. So like I think this is a bad sign that teams really don't respect Fudge, and the way C9 is playing, in my opinion, shows that they also think he has some weaknesses that teams are going to look at exploiting right now, and so like teams are going to have to just get smarter about it because they definitely can punish him in lane. They definitely can win through topside, but you have to like know that that is Cloud9's strat. Is they're going to have Blabber show up and hard camp his lane. They're going to have Perks play Galio or TF or Rise and just port his way up there so they can dive you under turret. Like that's their game plan right now, is through topside to really cover their weaknesses. And so, like, you just have to be ready for that and figure out how to, like, or, like, maybe instead just pick Gangplank into whatever the hell Fudge is doing and just queue him all day so he has a miserable gameplay experiences and you outscale. Because, like, that's a much safer way to punish, like, a underperforming player than, like, to specifically try and solo kill them 5 times and then, like, go into it with a very obvious game plan, which then the Udyr can show up and, point click CC you into oblivion.
All right, we've talked about some mistakes. It's time to talk about one of the top 2 teams in the league that didn't get fed by flashless Camille's. Your 100 Thieves sitting tied for the top of the league at 5-1 with wins over who's their only losses to C9.
Cloud9.
They beat everybody else they've gotten, including TL, including EG. So
they managed to come back in a couple of ridiculous games.
Mm-hmm. So Eric, I'll start with you on this one. Is 100 Thieves staying top 2 in the league sustainable?
I'm worried about it. I wouldn't be super shocked if for first split they stayed top 2, just off of like the strength of their performance, and I think that their pick ban is a lot better than some of the competition. But like Someday still appears sometimes out of sync with the team a bit, or at least like he's not at full carry form at the moment. And the other big concern I have is that like their loss to C9 really felt like mid gap again, where Perks just like was really punishing DeMonte and making that matchup look very lopsided. And while to some degree it's Perks,
It's an unpleasant matchup as far as I'm aware. Zoe
Yeah.
Galio is rough for the Galio.
Yeah, but like, but it's like when you're up against like when we look at these other top teams and these are like the all-star mid laners, like there's a lot of pressure on DeMonte to be able to make things happen on the map, to build a lead so that FBI and Someday can really show up and carry these games. And it might come down to partially them like changing up their pick ban strategy just a bit to cover for like these comps that allow other teams to punish the fact that they're going to be trying to carry through bot. Like because like that was the other thing is that was Blabber's Rek'Sai game, which was which like involved Blabber just 1v1ing FBI out of fights, and so like that like really offsets the power of Kai'Sa, because like good Kai'Sa players with good teams should be able to dodge the Rek'Sai and get to the backline. So you dodge their all in by all inning them, but like C9 was incredibly strong at preventing FBI from having that opportunity to like follow Someday into the backline. And Someday was also having a hard time assembling these flanks. So I saw a lot of weaknesses out of how they approached that game that like Cloud9 with Perks and Blabber were just like really adept at punishing and then setting up that win. And that's very like, at least that's a good learning experience for them to like get that before going into another best of series. But like it's very dangerous for like staying top of the table. I definitely think they're gonna like have a very high win rate against the low end teams, because like they had some pretty bad gold deficits against like CLG and like a couple of the other bottom teams, and were able to come back in those games. So I'm very like I think their odds of dropping far are off the table at this point. It's just more of can they stay at the top that worries me.
I will say that Cloud9 had the most disgusting of all in comps with Gragas, Rek'Sai, Zoe, Rell, and Samira. Like
You only get to set one of them out.
Yeah, like there is that is a really gross team comp. Like just on paper, you're like, ooh, yeah, they're gonna take some bodies.
And the Gragas in that comp was like perfect because it's like nigh unkillable, and then it also provides counter engage. So if Hui is trying to like set ult into their team too, like it's not just you can't set ult one of them out, it's that you can't even really set ult in.
Yeah,
if you like run it them, you're gonna get like casked away and then hit with a bubble, and then you're dead. And that did happen. And like their comp was very solid, but like so was 100 Thieves comp in that game. It was very solid. It's just that like they couldn't make the plays happen in such a way that they could kill Sven early enough in order to like get an advantage, or kill Perks in order to like really win it.
Eric, can I read you a couple of stats about FBI?
Oh, great. Especially if they involve like the numbers that I took off the table by banning Kai'Sa against you in fantasy.
So I clearly maybe need to pick Senna next week in fantasy. So 5.3 KDA best on the team, 82% KDA, best kill participation on the team as the ADC. And this is over the 6 games of the LCS so far, so not counting lock-in. 35% of his team's damage
Bark.
Yeah.
which is impressive for one game. For that to be over 6 is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I will also note that I mentioned Senna. The only game he's lost was a loss on Kaisa, which I believe was the
C9.
C9 loss. He's got 2 wins on Senna thus far with the casual 27 KDA over 2 games.
Senna's like really good in NA. I'm curious if it's as good in other regions. Just because of the levels of aggression. Like if your game is going to slow down, if you're going to have these like NA rock paper scissors stare downs in the bush by dragon for multiple minutes at a time, Senna's great. Like
It is
it's
perhaps
really impressive.
notable that 100 Thieves currently have the longest average game duration in the league at 37 minutes.
To be fair, like I think that's also because they've done a good job in staying in games or like coming back in games more than some of these other teams have. Like because TSM in their losses has folded, and some of these other teams like they fold in losses. And C9's or 100 Thieves is like macro on some of these games has looked less trash. Still not good, but less trash than the competition. So like that lets them have these longer game times, but. You're totally right in that, like, Senna's great for that, though. That's also, like, probably why their game times were so long. Because it turns out if you build a lane lead in Senna, you're going to slowly bleed them out. You're not going to, like, GG next, like if you have Samira who has 5 kills. It's just, like, a very, like, much slower paced win, but still is very impressive.
Yeah, and like we look at the champion pool, which is where I want to end with FBI and with 100 Thieves. The other pick he brought out was Ezreal, who we haven't seen much in pro play since the debut of the new items. But you put that in 2 games on Kaisa, 2 games on Senna plus Aphelios plus Ezreal. He's not playing the Samira. He's not playing the more early focus things. He's playing for late.
What was the item build path you went on that Ezreal game again? It was something bizarre, and like I thought it was fascinating at the time.
I'm gonna check right now. Which game was that? It was the most recent one. It was a TL game, and it was Duskblade.
It was like he went Duskblade and then like I think had like Essence.
Duskblade, Essence Reaver, Hydra, Ravenous Hydra.
Yeah, like that build was fascinating to me that he was going Duskblade on this because like normally in solo queue and other stuff you see people go like Divine Sunder, which is designed for fighting against front lines, right? Or like or like building a mythic that has the Spellblade proc, but instead he was going Duskblade for the lethality. And the ability cooldown reduction, or whatever it's called now, ability haste, and then also like this invisible thing, which really doesn't matter on Ezreal. So it was just really fascinating to me that it's like that was the build path he was going in that game. I wonder if it was shaped by the fact that they were winning, but like it was just really different. Like that was the path he ended up going. And I'm wondering if that's also another option for what teams could be doing with Ezreal or even Varus in like this meta would be shifting towards these like more poke centric AD carries. They also used Ezreal ult in that game in a really fascinating way because it was always up for vision. It's like a better hawk shot. It's up all the time and it does more damage. So yeah.
Steven, what do you think about Ezreal in the current meta?
I think he's strong, but he has to be able to survive the all-in comp. I think we are really looking at you have to have puzzle pieces. You have to have like a certain subset of components to be functional. So Ezreal does really well with a Rell, because you can protect her during the abysmal laning phase, but when she jumps in, you're going to be able to participate in the fight because no one's going to be able to stick to you. So I think he has potential, but I think Kaisa, Samira, I think Xayah still has a lot of potential before Ezreal comes into play.
Well, and the last item I want to talk about, FBI is the only NA player to pick up the Vayne, who has started to see things in assorted other regions. We looked this up before the podcast. It started up in China a little bit and has since made its way to EU. FBI is still the only NA player that's played it at all, but it's appeared enough in the other three regions that it merits a mention here. Eric, what do you think of Vayne in the current meta?
I think it's good if the enemy team doesn't have a lot of CC, or if they like specifically drafted this peel comp. Like if they picked like top Gragas, and they picked like a Galio mid lane, and then they like have like top Gragas with Jungle Graves for some nonsense reason, Galio, and then they have like some low engage comp. Like Vayne is great into that because you can super punish the fact that they can't kill you without like blowing multiple flashes to try and like take an advantage, and that to me is where Vayne looks good. In the 100 Thieves game, I actually didn't really like Vayne too much because like the enemy team had a lot of CC, and that's very scary when you have like this short range AD carry that has to land 3 autos to feel satisfying. So like it's so I think it can be very strong because the damage output is incredibly high, but it's really like a counter pick into an enemy comp. So you have to trick them into picking this like low engage team scenario, like Rare Atom style from the LPL, and then you pick the Vayne into it, and then you just like shred their tanks. It's the optimal way to get through that.
Steven, what do you think of Vayne in the current meta? Same problem?
Yeah, like Vayne's not going to be good into burst comps. Like when we start seeing like the Cho'Gath like really pick up and like you want the health shred, and these are extended fights where she can go invisible like 10 times while tumbling and chunking stuff down, but it's just too easy for her to get caught up in like an Orianna ult or the Renekton flying at her to stun her, and she's lost 3/4 of her health, and a glancing breeze pushes her over the edge. There's too much going on until you get into a scenario like Eric mentioned, like the only way they're going to get on is like a Gragas belly flop flash, but even that's predictable enough to where like you could queue up a impale to knock the fat man away. She has potential, but not until the burst comes down and we start getting those longer extended fights. But then you're looking at a lot different pool of other AD carries that become viable as well. So I think it's a preference.
There you go. We end with a little fantasy discussion. We moved, not I guess not moved because our draft buff league still exists, but switched and also created a league on Sleeper, the official League of Legends app. I have now lost to Eric on both apps in consecutive weeks with teams that I thought were better. This week, I got wrecked by Sleeper's pick and ban system, where you pick a champion and ban a champion for each role. If you pick a champion and it isn't banned, you get double points anytime your player plays that champion. If it's picked by you and banned by your opponent, it neutralizes, so you just get the normal points. And if it's banned, you get 0 points from it. So, for example, I, this weekend, unfortunately, tried to get cocky, saw an Aphelios game from FBI. I feel okay about having picked Aphelios, but picking Aphelios meant that I didn't pick Kaisa. So Eric, like a smart human, bans the most picked champion in the game right now. I lose, I think, 90 points off of FBI alone this weekend. My team, if there were no picks and bans, had the highest score in our league, but ended with the lowest score in our league because I got wrecked in pick and ban.
Yeah. One of the interesting things with adding pick ban into these fantasy leagues is that predictable players are like a vulnerability. Like, I know that Revenge likes playing Camille top lane. I'm gonna ban Camille every time. Guess who's not getting points off of Revenge this week? And it's
or like the fact that I have PoE. Who?
Yeah.
Well, look, Probably ban Azir.
Yeah, probably should ban Azir right now. Yeah. But and then you have to and so it turns it into even more of like a gambling thing where it's like, are teams gonna let PoE play Azir next week? Is that gonna happen? Because I'm just gonna assume that maybe they will ban ban out Azir every game. So I'm gonna lock in Orianna or Syndra and expect PoE to just play that champion, and I'm gonna get Buku points or something like that, and that's just so much more high risk because teams have not been banning OP stuff in NA the way I thought they would. Udyr got through a lot more than I was expecting, and then also Talia. I don't quite understand what picks are getting banned and why in NA, outside of some of the OP ones. Why are they letting people play Olaf pre-nerf? Why aren't they banning that? Why aren't they banning Kai'Sa when Kai'Sa had a 70+% win rate? Why are they just letting people pick this? I don't understand. And that kind of mentality to me with NA has been stronger than I've seen in a while. But
Steven, how did you find your fantasy experience this weekend?
So I'm in 3 sleeper fantasy, and I got snuffed on all of them. Completely off of. I got a little excited about my pick bans, and I got 0 points off of Someday on Renekton because I was like, oh, he played Jax, he's gonna have 1 Jax game, and I'm gonna get 1,000,000 points and look hella cool, and then no, and I lost mine by 20 points on average, very close, and I was completely gated out of a complete player on my roster in all 3 of them. So I like the pick ban a lot. I think that makes, because I was initially upset because you don't have teams and you don't have a bench, but the pick ban just makes it where you actually have to pay attention and interact every week. Specifically knowing okay, who are they gonna get to play, what are they gonna leave open for your team. So it gives me more of that coach feel. I get to coach a League of Legends team with my pick bans.
It gives you something to do after the league starts, right?
Yep.
Because that's one of the differences with League versus fantasy football. In fantasy football, your roster has a whole offense, and when you have a quarterback and a running back and 2 wide receivers and a flex spot for offense or whatever, that's a lot of people that you can do roster swaps for or trade in and out. And then people have on weeks and off weeks where they just aren't playing, or they're playing against strong teams. And then if especially if we're just focused on NA, you don't really have enough wiggle room to really do roster swaps based off of matchup strength as much, and average player score is much less predictable than in traditional sports in a lot of ways, where it's I can't just understand that this free agent is going to be making more points this week, so I should sub them in over my starting roster player in this role. And giving you something to do in the middle of the season is pretty important, because that's the only thing that stops people from enrolling in 100 different fantasy leagues and then not touching them for the entire split, which isn't a good loyalty experience or anything else.
That is how my fantasy basketball league has been going. I haven't paid attention to it in 2 weeks. Whoops, my bad. Which is bad because I have to set lineups for it every day and make sure my bench players aren't playing games while my starting players aren't not playing games. I don't care enough is the answer for that. Okay, a couple things to wrap up. Steven, have you seen the new bee-based skins that are coming out on the PvE right now?
I am a new Malzahar one trick, so I can bring the bees. And Oprah Winfrey, bees for everyone.
That skin is terrifying.
3 is your favorite bee skin.
Man, I don't know about favorite, but that Malzahar one is so terrifying.
Oh, it's so great.
Bee voidlings? Why? Just why?
Bees!
Yeah, oh gosh. And then, the cat that's a bee is, whatever. But But like the B Kog'Maw is also like, and like B Kog'Maw I think is like spot on in terms of like it's the terrifying but cuddly Kog'Maw aesthetic, right? Where it's like, this is adorable, but it's creepy and I don't want to touch it. And it captures that perfectly.
The Kog'Maw one is definitely my favorite. I love that. I love that splash. I'm excited to see how they look in game. I try to play Cog. It's really hard right now because he doesn't feel very good with new items or in the current meta. Speaking of champions that die to a stiff breeze, but he has so many good skins that I deeply enjoy. Like, oh man, this one's good. Butterfly's good. Lion Dance is good. Like, he's got so many good skins.
Kog'Maw.
I just want him to be better. That's all I got. Anyway, we wrap as we usually do. Hey Steven, what are you playing lately?
Oh, nothing. I'm living my best life, not with video games.
You have 2 kids. We get
I
it.
do.
Eric, what have you been playing?
A non-zero amount of Tristana. Actually back in bot lane because
That's where she belongs.
I've been winning lane down there consistently, so that feels nice. I'm in a better space there.
I have attempted to play the all random Earth experience that has gone on and have found it deeply unpleasant because every game there's a champion on the opposing team. Doesn't really matter which one that can build Duskblade. And I'm bad at tracking champions after they start getting kill resets with Duskblade. Like, oh, this Kha'Zix is just invisible forever now, and I can't actually cast any buttons on it. That's really not fun for me. I'm gonna die again and again and again and again and again.
It's like that game mode in like Perfect Dark on N64 where like one of you is invisible and then you have to like, you know, just like suffer through that gameplay experience, and that's when I stopped playing that game with friends.
However, I did in the, I think the last one that I played, I got absolutely disgustingly hard carried by Urf Xinjiao, which is just gross. He doesn't take damage like after a certain point. I don't know what happened mid lane, but he got a couple of kills and then he just ran around the map and killed everyone under their towers for the rest of the game. I don't know what happened. That was just it.
Strength of coursing river, man. Like,
yeah, basically, like
raging typhoon.
Yep. If I had to pick a champion that I actually play, the Vel'Koz feels very satisfying on there, especially when you're playing against someone who doesn't understand how Vel'Koz works. Because you just when you can chain Qs together while they're still slowed and just keep geometrying all over them, it's very satisfying. So that's what I got. Steven, what one champion do you wish you could play in Earth if you were to play a game of Earth?
Ooh, Xerath.
What do you crave the most?
I want to throw lightning, Xerath.
You want to do some Xerath stuff?
Yeah.
Xerath, like, that's one of the ones that I really find unpleasant to play against because Xerath can almost just chain stun you. Just like the Morg, if you get hit by one Morg binding in an Earth game, you're just gonna be there until you're dead. Because she's just gonna keep hitting it on you. It's over. Yeah, it's not fun. But in the norms, I've been playing Fiora. I haven't had anything better than the thing I had 2 weeks ago, but it was pretty fun. So we're gonna wrap up for this week. In 2 weeks, we will be back. I promise. We will actually talk a little bit about LPL and LCK when we get back as they return from Lunar New Year break, because there's some spicy storylines in there that I feel are only going to get spicier, including is T1 actually back? Have they settled on a best 5 to play yet? We'll find out. And what on God's earth is going on in the LPL? How many more Rise games will Doomby have played by the next time we record? Because if I know that man, I know what he likes to play, and it's Rise. I just hope we get some more classic Doomby picks. He was really starting to get into his zone of just gonna pick whatever I want to pick and win on it probably, because that's what that man does. I hope we see some Kled. It would make me very happy if I saw some Kled. But we'll find out. I'm just gonna click here. FPX has played 17 individual games so far this split. Doinby's picks so far: Rumble, Renekton, TF, Victor, Rise, Kled, Oriana, Set this season.
Woof.
I love that man. He's my favorite. He's played 4 games of mid Rumble this season.
Dark technology.
Who does that?
Forbidden. This is forbidden.
Like, his most played mid laner, this split, the same as all the other teams we talked about in this episode, is Rumble. What?
Can't tell a man what to do.
And he has played Renekton more than his top laner has. His top laner, who, won Worlds last split. Or last year. It's just silly. We're going to talk about FPX next episode because I love that team and I want to see them do well. They make me happy. So that's all I got. Eric, any closing thoughts?
Bees.
Bees?
Bees.
Bees.
Not the bees! All right, we're out for this week of Reaction Time. Check the socials. Steven, do the plug.
Buy the merch.
Plug.
Buy the merch. FunkyGames.com. There's a link tree. There's all kinds of cool stuff. You could buy it and then wear it and like and subscribe and tell us what to do because we'll do it. Don't tempt us.
It's basically true. I'm not going to finish any more of the thoughts I had about that. This has been Reaction Time. We'll see you next time.